Welcome back to What Would You Ask podcast. My guest today, and I'm excited to have him in the tank. Great episode, have him on the show, but great episode when he was in the tank. He is the creator of the Hanukkah Tree Topper. You remember that, right? He's also the head of sales and retail for the Shark Group, a very sought-after motivational speaker and soon-to-be author as well. In the few hours he has left, he's a personal consultant and coach. He's the founder of, One Life Advisor. He is a father of three. You know, the only solace in this whole thing is the guy's living in San Diego, right? If you went and from Bridgeport, Connecticut, you'd be like, oh man, but he's in San Diego. I spent 12 days in La Jolla and almost left my wife. It was that good. Have you been to La Jolla, folks? Morri also volunteers with numerous charities and boards. And check this out. I've always wanted to do this, be a voice of a character on television, cartoon character. He's done that too. He appeared in ABC hit show Shark Tank Season 5, Episode 12. And then they had to go back for more. A little more Morri. It's not going to hurt anybody. So they went back in Season 6 and did that update. Very excited to welcome to What Would You Ask podcast, Morri, I can't say your name. Sorry. Morri Chowaiki. Is that correct, Morri? I've been practicing. Chowaiki. Sorry, Morri. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Not a problem. I'm very well. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing great, and I'm glad you're here. Tell us a little bit about...
I'll tell you, before you go there, I'll tell you a little bit about San Diego. There's a slogan, and apparently you almost got bitten by it. It's where you come to play and wish you could stay.
That is so true.
Yeah.
The weather, I don't remember when I was there, but it was just fantastic. Every day was beautiful.
It's not been the worst place to be quarantined, let's say that.
Yeah, there you go. So tell everybody about the tree topper that you brought in, a little bit about the invention itself, the creation, the purpose. Tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. So essentially, it was some of the greatest ideas, I guess, come from just, life experience. I was brought up traditionally Jewish. My wife came from a mixed faith family. She was born in Australia. Her mother was Jewish, but her father was Greek Orthodox. And so, from the time we've been married now about 21 years, and when we first got married, we would kind of, observe, sort of each other's customs and whatnot. And then when we started having kids, I remember her asking me, that she really wanted to, kind of have a Christmas celebration in the house, and asked me if she could put up a tree. And, I was like, there's no way. This is not happening. No way, never. Well, as many men who are married know, happy wife.
Happy life.
Thank you. So, about 10 years later, I got, a little bit less stubborn, and I finally said, okay, just don't go over the top, because if I walk in and I see like the nativity and like little baby Jesus in the front room, maybe that's going to be a little much for me. So one day, and this goes back to about 2004, I think, she says, okay, don't come out of your office until I call you. And I hear all this, hustling and rustling downstairs. And I go downstairs, and on our dining room table, she's put this little 3-foot tall Christmas tree on the table. She's decked it out with blue and silver ornaments, menorahs and dreidels, happy Hanukkah wrapping paper, blue and silver sort of fabrics everywhere. And on the top of the tree is a standard 5-pointed star. And no joke, I just made a joke. I said, you couldn't find a Jewish star to put on top of the tree? She said, actually, I looked for one and I couldn't find one. I'm like, come on, it's got to exist. And so I looked and I looked and I looked, didn't exist. And then I started to really do the research, and I found out that there are over 1.5 million households in the US that were just like mine, with one person who's Jewish and one person who isn't. And 90% of those were people that were married to somebody Christian. So I went ahead and I actually trademarked the name Hanukkah Tree Topper. I trademarked the tagline, the world's first menorah mint. And I actually patented the design of a Jewish star tree topper, and put it online. It took 4 years from the time I had the idea to actually make my first one. And my first year, just online, I sold over 10,000 units. And then before I hit Shark Tank, I had sold over 150,000 units out of my garage.
Wow.
While working a full-time job. selling to retailers, and you name it. So yeah.
Wow. Jeez, that's impressive.
Yep.
Wow. And so what was the inspiration or the goal behind getting on Shark Tank?
Great question. I first tried out for season 4. And, the goal was always just amplification.
Sure.
I mean, that was just a side hustle. I come from a long background of, e-commerce, consumer goods, big box retail, marketing, sales. And so, the goal was always amplification. Hey, if I can, get on a national stage of 10 million people for free, why not?
Yep.
And, tried out for season 4, didn't get on. Got all the way to the video round. I don't know if a lot of people know, but, you basically start in a pool of 60,000 and you end up, being one of 120 that air. And then season 5 came around and I said, I'm going to try it again. My wife thought I was crazy. And I went ahead and I auditioned in person and obviously got through. Originally, the goal was amplification for the company. But then the goal changed. As I really got to research the sharks and I really got to research the process, I said to myself, you know what? If I'm lucky enough to be one of those 120 people out of 60,000, well, then my goal isn't funding for a tree topper. My goal is that group of individuals. My goal is how do I elevate myself, my career, my standing, my reputation? How do I get somehow or another to work with one of those guys? And that's kind of what happened.
Jeez, that is exactly what happened.
You can't hit a target you can't see, and that truly was my goal.
And you got a deal, which, I mean, come on.
Yep.
It's a 2 for 1.
Well, it was a pretty interesting way that it went down. I had Robert, Lori, Kevin, Mark, and Damon on my panel. And, I start pitching and, obviously I'm trying to do a lot of high energy. I've been pretty comfortable with performance and I knew my numbers. I really knew my business.
Yeah, you did. Yep.
And, you only see 8 minutes. My pitch lasted an hour and 45 minutes.
Wow.
There's a lot you didn't see. But I got a lot of the very same feedback, which is this truly your only job? No. I was working full-time selling enterprise software at the time. This is it? It's these 2 products? Like, you're too good for this. And lo and behold, Robert went out with huge compliments, Kevin the same, Lori the same, Mark went out with big, huge compliments, and then there's Damon. And, here I am, I've done all my homework, right? And I remember thinking in the back of my mind, okay, maybe Lori, that's a good angle. She's got the QVC thing going. Mark, I know he's Jewish and he's married to somebody of another faith. Maybe there's something there. When just Damon's left, I pretty much was figuring, all right, nice little, Jewish kid from LA. There's the black FUBU dude from Hollis, Queens. I'm like, honey, get the car. We're done. And then lo and behold, he comes out with it. And, he tells me a great anecdote. And I don't remember if this was captured on air or not, that his father left his mother and him when he was 10. And his mother basically ended up dating a man that Damon considered his stepfather, and he was of the Jewish faith. And many of his business partners were Jewish, and he just liked me, and he liked how sharp-witted I was, and that I got, I was able to answer quickly, and he made me an offer. And man, I don't care. I would have given him 100% of my company for nothing just to stay relevant and hit my goal.
That's really a cool story. I mean, there's definitely, you could tell there was something just in the short time we saw talking. You guys had something. You could tell that was obvious. I'm sure over an hour and 40 minutes, there was a lot more to that. I don't remember that. I remember that story. I don't know if it was on, I heard it somewhere. I'm not sure if it was on your particular episode about Damon and his stepdad being Jewish, but that's an interesting thing. Let me ask you a couple questions from our members. Ashley from Madison, Wisconsin wants to know, was there a weak area of your business that you thought would be concerning during the Q&A with the sharks?
Definitely. The fact that it had 2 SKUs sold to probably 0.1% of the country's population 1 month a year, and the quality was great. So you buy, never need another one.
Right.
I mean, that was the weakest point of it.
Yeah. That's true. I mean, the seasonal aspect, then you have the
Yeah.
addressable market itself, right? Yeah, that's a good point. Melissa from Toronto, Canada wanted to know, Morri, did you have a specific shark? You kind of answered that, but did you have one in mind pre getting into the tank?
Yeah, I think I was probably thinking most about Lori just because of the fact that she had the retail angle really figured out, because if it was all about sales, she's a monster. And in fact, I love Lori, and she had, past tense, the top two best-selling products in Shark Tank history. She had the Squatty Potty
Squatty Potty, yep.
and she had the Scrub Daddy.
Yep.
But now the best-selling product in Shark Tank history is one of Damon's, and that's Bomba Socks. So we've knocked her down, man. We've knocked her down.
That's right. Bomba Socks is, man, that is taken off. Wow.
It really has. It really has.
Alex from Jupiter, Florida wants to know, Morri, any funny behind-the-scenes anecdotes or memorable moments?
Wow, a lot. I'll give you one that happened before we taped and one during taping.
Sounds good.
So the before one was, as you mentioned before, I have done cartoon voices professionally. And in fact, I was a theater major, and I grew up doing lots of stage and dialects, and my voice can sound like Elmo or an old Jewish man, right? So when I went to my in-person audition for season 5, I decided to turn it up a notch, and I went in full on in character, sounding like, a very stereotypical old Jewish man pitching this product. Funny and loud and obnoxious, and there's 20 people in the room, and I'm yelling and screaming, but I also inserted the important elements, which was, the sales, the gross margin, the cost per customer, all those things, so they knew I was serious. And then, of course, I come out of character. So, they end up calling me, and they said, "We loved it. Can you submit a video of, the longer pitch, the 5 minutes that the first 2,500 people get?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. Do you want it as me like this, or do you want it in character?" "Oh, we love the character. Do it in character." So I hire a videographer. He comes to my house. I film this thing. It was great. About a week later, I get a call, and they say, "We loved it. But, we're wondering what you would sound like straight as well. So do you mind redoing it straight? Get the same shirt on, put the same pants on, call the videographer up, do the whole thing all over again." Send it in. A month goes by, 2 months go by, 3 months go by, nothing. I figured, that's it, it's done. I'm getting on a plane for another business opportunity, and I remember the phone call. And I answer the phone, and it's so-and-so from Shark Tank, who's a different person than I had worked with before. I'm going to go, "Hi." And she goes, "Hi, yeah, we're just following up on that second video that you were supposed to send. Like, we're still waiting on it. What's up?" So, "What are you talking about? I sent that in like 3 months ago." She goes, "You did? Hold on a second." Puts me on hold. I hear some chatter in the background, and she goes, "Okay, we found it. Thanks, bye." Hangs up the phone. I'm like, So anyway, the next week they called me and they said, "Okay, now we're going to really get the process rolling." So that was a very scary but happy moment.
Yeah.
The other thing is that when you walk down that the hallway, right?
Mm-hmm.
First of all, there's no music. The music comes after post-production.
Right.
So it's quiet, like you can hear a pin drop. And then, you're supposed to hit your mark, which is this little X on the floor. And they tell you to stand there in front of the sharks and give them just a second to get the lighting and the sound all right before they tell you to go. Well, what they don't tell you is that second is actually more like a minute and a half to 2 minutes. And you're not supposed to talk to them. You're not supposed to move. You're supposed to just stand there and look at them, and that's it. Man, if you've ever felt your underarm sweat drip down to where it goes into your shoes, and then they say go, and you've got no cue cards, you've got no prompters, you've got no stop and start, it's one of the most nerve-wracking moments in the world. But, thank goodness somebody up there was looking at me favorably, and I knocked it out of the park.
Yes, you did. And before we get into the Shark Group and what you're doing today and about what's going on with the product and Damon and all that stuff.
Yep.
We had so many responses, Morri, from fans asking about the moment in what we call Shark Tank Alley, which is that hallway you were talking about.
Yep.
You
Where
went
I
out.
cried like a baby.
You went out to, well, we didn't get any of that. We got that there's a guy that cares about his family and his wife and wants to
Yep.
share the news. Tell us a little bit about that. What, do we miss a lot? Was
So,
it edited? Tell us a little bit about it.
yeah, it was interesting. So what they do is, they always determine who your phone a friend is going to be, right? And they and there's one element that got cut, which is when Damon made me the offer, where the counter offer to my offer. I mean, like I said, I was going to take it, but I know drama. And so I asked for a moment to go call my wife because, rightfully so, she's a co-owner of the business. I didn't want to make that decision without her. And I went out into the hallway and they hand you a phone and, you're listening, but it's like really dull on the other end because I don't know, it's like a weird technology or something. And so, I come back out and then I accept the deal, right? Well, what I didn't know is that she had at that time, because it was, I guess, either in the morning or the afternoon, I can't remember, she was actually in the car with the kids, and the kids at that time were obviously much younger. They were, call it, if this was in 2012, they were 10 and 8. And so as soon as I make the deal and I, give Damon the hug and whatever, I walk back in the hallway. The producer grabs me and says, "Hey, we've got your wife on the phone." I said, "Okay." They didn't tell me the kids were on the phone. Oh. And they had, I guess, when they had first done the phone a friend, they had heard her on the phone with the kids and they thought it would be a good moment after, And so I come back. And, what are you doing to me, man? I'm getting teary-eyed right now. I come back and my kids are on the phone and they're like, "Tell your wife and kids what happened." And I tell them.
And
right?
They start yelling. And
they just start yelling,
so cool.
And I'm like done, because what at the end of the day, this is all about the lesson. Dream big,
yeah.
But you got to get up, and you got to go for it, or else you don't get it. And to them, it was this moment of like, Dad's a superhero, and I'll never forget. At my viewing party, which happened, obviously a few months later, my 10-year-old son wrote me a beautiful card. And the very first thing it says is, "Daddy, I'm proud of you." You taught us that you can achieve your dreams. And I'm bawling when I'm reading this card. And my son says, "Why are you crying, Daddy?" I said, "Because that's my job to tell you." How many times do our kids tell us they're proud of us? Now that's something to strive for.
Yeah, that really is. Well said. Well said. That's good stuff. Oh man, that was. So moving on, tell us a little bit about that due diligence period. Now you have a guy, you obviously felt that you guys have some kind of, something going on there. And it's obvious to everybody. Tell us a little bit about how the relationship developed, how the due diligence went. Tell us a little bit about the whole thing.
Yeah, there's, you're right. The deal you make in the tank is just a handshake. And then, there's due diligence for what could be sometimes a couple of months, could be as much as 9 months to a year. Mm-hmm. And keep in mind, you never know if your episode's going to actually air. Even if it films, they film 200. They only air 120.
Yeah.
So, you have that moment, right? You walk away. Then you go and you meet a couple of people, and one of the people you meet is one of his team members. You don't talk to him. And I remember, he asked me during the tank, and even the person afterwards asked me if I'd be open to licensing the product. I'm like, yeah, sure, And so, we kind of kept in touch. I didn't speak to him again. And then about 2 months later, I think it was right before my episode aired, I was actually going to New York on other business. And I called his representative and I said, "Hey, I'm in town. You want to meet up?" And she said, "Well, actually, Damon's here in the office and he'd love to meet with you." I'm like, "Great. So come on over." Empire State Building, the entire 67th floor, get out of the elevator. There's the door with a big old FUBU sign, and I'm going,
that's so cool.
Where the heck am I? This is so surreal, man. This is so surreal. And I get in there and go to this like big, huge, you know, kind of mahogany table that he's got in the conference room, and waiting for him. And he walks in and kind of shake hands. You know, of course, I'm like sweating and nervous. And we basically just shoot it up for an hour. And, you know, I tell him about, you know, a couple of things in my life. You know, I tell him about, you know, some adversity that I had that actually led to the creation of the product. I tell him about my history and my family. And he tells me, he opens up to me. And, you know, I grew up, you know, around a lot of high net worth individuals. So, you know, I'm pretty cool and collected when it comes to that. I'm not like, you know, give me an autograph. I'm not, you know, I've learned in 20 years of being in sales, people do business with people they like.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, being likable is very, very important, and, you know, not being annoying. And so we just had it out, and he told me some personal stuff, and I told him some personal stuff. And at the end of it, he said, listen, is this your only job? Because, you know, he didn't remember what was in the tank. I said, no, I'm actually, you know, I'm kind of a corporate guy. He's like, okay. He's like, I don't really want to be in this business. And I really don't want to give you the money, and I don't want to take any equity from you. But if you're willing to license this out, I'll give you access to my licensing folks and my attorneys, and, you know, see if we can get it done. I was like, done. Because again, my goal was to stay relevant.
Yep.
He had that thing licensed out in 10 and a half minutes to the biggest Christmas wholesaler that there was. And I still collect mailbox money to this day, and he never took a thing for it.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's how that worked out. Now, you know, that due diligence period changes. I mean, but I'll be honest, a lot of it has to do with the personal relationship. Damon doesn't invest in businesses; he invests in people.
Yeah. Tell us about Damon, the Damon you know. I'm not asking to give up any secrets or any personal stuff, but tell us about what the viewers and listeners would like to know about Damon John, the person.
They call him the people shark for a reason. He cares. And he's a man of his word, and he is a very humble individual that came from nothing, and still embarrassed that his favorite restaurant is Golden Corral. So gross. But he's a good human. You know, he expects people to be, he treats people the way he expects to be treated. There's always a very strong level of respect. He's a very fair individual, and he's a lot of fun to be around. Yeah. He's really got a magnetic, attractive personality, and he has such an eclectic, wonderful group of friends and associates, and he's very, very generous with his connections, with his time. You know, you got to earn it, but he's very generous.
That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
I love the fact that he never forgets where he's come from. He's not in, you know, there's people I know out in the corporate world that have become very successful, but they don't want to be reminded about their past, and that's another life. It was someone else. He's the opposite. He's, you know, he wants to be reminded or remind people that he's just like they were, or worse. I mean, he comes from, so what he talks about living, you know, even the early days of FUBU and a lot of the stuff that I read about him, you know, his mother was so generous to him, like, yeah, go ahead and have the guys move in and let's do it right here. And and then, you know, he just pays back tenfold. It's amazing. It's an amazing story, and he seems to be an amazing guy. I don't know him at all, but I love hearing about it. So tell us how your relationship with him continued to progress. It wasn't like, let's license and move on. It's, you guys had really
No, it was actually.
Was it really?
It was.
Okay.
Oh yeah. He's like, yeah, let's license it and we'll keep in touch and see what happens. But that wasn't enough for me. So, you know, over the next, call it 6 months, you know, I was, you know, at that meeting, he's like, all right, fine. You know, here's my cell phone number, you know, kind of like the unspoken don't abuse it sort of thing.
Right.
So during the next 6 months, you know, I just drop a line every so often. Just stay relevant. Just a little tidbit here, a little tidbit there. And then I remember he had made a deal for an energy drink company. And I called him up and I said, hey, would you like me to help you get that into a couple of retail chains? He's like, what do you mean? I thought you sell tree toppers. I'm like, I do other things. And so, I did a couple favors for him. And then, he had a business plan that he needed done. And I offered to do that. And I, obviously never asked for anything in return. And then little by little, we started talking a little bit more. And then he asked me actually to walk one of his newest Shark Tank investment company personnel through the process, kind of like somebody did for me. Mm-hmm. If you remember Mission Belt.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
So that guy, Nate, was the guy who walked me through the program. The person who Damon asked me to walk down the program, we'll leave the names out of it. The company's founder ended up being, let's just call it unprofessional and a little too energetic. But it ended up fine. And it was probably one of the most unprofessional experiences I've ever had to deal with. And then I found out that was kind of like Damon's trial by fire because nobody wanted to deal with it. And he kind of, I handled it. And so then, kind of things got closer. But what really changed was about a year and a half after meeting him, he invited me to one of his keynote speeches. And Damon, up until COVID, of course, was one of the top most sought after speakers in the country, maybe the world. I think he's in the top 10. And he was probably doing 3 keynotes a week. And I can't remember which one it was. It was either Johnson & Johnson or Deloitte or one of those guys. And, I'm sitting there. Damon's up on stage, and his format's like a one-man play. He does this incredible keynote with music and sound effects. He's got a DJ in the back, and it's this journey through FUBU and Shark Tank and his life in the Ark. It's just really beautiful. The entire 3,000 people are mesmerized. But I'm looking at the front row. The front row has the C-suite of a $100 billion corporation. And I know Damon has an agency that he does a lot of big brand partnerships with. And I see him get off stage, meet and greet, sign thing, and that's that. Well, I'm a hunter. I'm business development hunter my whole life. And I go to Damon after. I said, Damon, hey, what's going on with that front row? He's like, what do you mean? I said, is that like that every time? Yeah, it's always the CEO and the CMO and the CTO and the C whatever. I go, my God, what an opportunity. Who's networking with those people? He's like, what do you mean? I said, I mean, that's like captive audience right there, and they love you. What if we try to kind of upsell things a little bit? He's like, no, I don't want to be salesy. I said, I get that, and I'm not sitting there selling them T-shirts like you used to, but let me at least maybe, have an opportunity to develop. He's like, what are you talking about? Don't you have a job selling tree toppers? I go, God, fucking tree toppers. And, excuse my French, you can bleep that out later. Yeah. But I go, and so I said to him, hey, just, maybe I can come to a couple of these things and see what happens. His company, the Shark Group, is an agency with 40 people. 6 months go by. I'm moonlighting. I'm working for a company doing software sales. I'm going with him on the side, to a few of these events. He's posting me on social media. I'm begging him to take it down because my boss is trolling my social media stuff. My wife's saying, you're going to get fired from your job. Friends are saying you're going to get fired. And I'm thinking to myself, well, you know what? So be it, because how often do you get a chance like this? 6 months go by. Damon sits me down. This is the conversation verbatim. Morri, sit down. Yeah, he says, I don't understand you, man. Okay. You want to expand on that a little bit? He goes, you annoy the living you-know-what out of me. I go, okay. Was there a point? He goes, but in 6 months, you've brought in more incremental revenue to my organization than anybody on my team has in the last 4 years. So quit your damn job and get over here. Wow. And that's when it started. So it's been almost 5 years now. I am front-end sales for his entire organization. I bring in lots of leads. I do lots of networking, lots of, I go over some of the deals that come to us. And then because of my retail background, I also manage his entire retail portfolio. So basically, I'm now the guy that gets people like me on Shark Tank, helps their dreams come true. So it's pretty freaking awesome. And, when you see those Shark Tank updates now, where is he now, type of thing, a lot of that has to do with what I get to do every day.
That is so cool.
Yeah. And I traveled, up until COVID. I was probably on the road with Damon, 60% of the time, going to all of his events and doing business development. So we got to know each other real well.
Well, thank you so much.
I'm also the only one that's ever been on Shark Tank that actually ended up working for one of the sharks. So, I get to be on set when we film the new episodes, and no other entrepreneur has been able to do that. So it's been a true gift.
That's so cool. I love that fact. How he would bring up the tree toppers. That's so funny.
It's one of those things, like, those people that like say your name wrong just to piss you off.
It's interesting though, and I encourage our listeners to go back and check out that episode. Season 5, episode 12. It is. You can tell that there's a instant relationship between these guys. A lot of respect, but they also see value in each other, and it's really cool to see. And now it's really, nurtured itself and turned into something wonderful. That's pretty darn cool.
Oh, this show. I mean, we just finished filming season 12.
Right.
And it premieres in mid-October, and we go back to Friday nights, which is amazing. There is a great camaraderie. Everybody is friends offset, but those fights are real, and it's, I think, been one of the best things to happen in business education in the last 25 years. The amount of, it's the number 1 show on ABC, but it's also the number 1 show on network, kids and parents watching together.
That's cool.
So great education for kids. Cool. Kids that had no idea are now questioning valuations. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to have you back on and talk a little bit more, continue the conversation from where we are now into what you've done in the last years and all that stuff. Because it's kind of what we're trying to do here at the podcast is, to show people that reaching for the stars is not an impossible, plight. It may be or may not be, but if you have to pivot, then you have to pivot. But we can do it with life lessons and business, lessons that help us along the way. And so I'll probably be knocking on your door again to have you come back on.
Not a problem, man. I would tell your listeners, number 1, there's no secret. It's you got to be willing to work harder than the other guy. And I was working a full-time job and packing boxes until 2 a.m. every day.
Yeah.
And the other thing is knowing, really having a goal. That's so important. And being willing to strive for that goal and, ignore the naysayers. And, but the other thing, which I will say, which, I went through, I had an e-commerce startup. I went corporate for 10 years. I went software for 9 years. I enjoyed all my jobs.
Yeah.
In fact, I only had one job I hated, and it lasted a week. The Tree Topper was the first business I ever did where I didn't care one lick about the money. I did it just because of the passion and how much fun I was having.
Yeah.
What happens?
Yeah.
Do what you love. That's a currency you just cannot count, and you're going to do that job better than anything else you don't love.
I agree. I tell my boys and my daughters all the time, find something what you love to do and you want to spend time at and turn it into a job somehow, because it's going to be the best product ever. Thank you, Morri. I will be inviting you back. I really appreciate your time today.
Sure thing, man.
All right. We'll be back with more What Would You Ask podcast in a second.